So should we start now or wait for another 2-3 minutes? 2 minutes more?
Yeah, okay.
So, sir, we are commencing the program. I think almost 100 people joined. So, first, our sincere thanks to all of you for joining us at today's online Agro Colloquium 2020 webinar on India's new agriculture reform, the way forward. First, we welcome Mr. Jayanto Chakraborty, Co-Chairperson, Agriculture and Rural Development Committee of the Bengal Chamber, and who is also the President of Baligan Society for Environment and Development, he said. We like to welcome our very special guest, Mr. V.R. Kandonia, Director General of Federation of Seed Industry of India, and Mr. R.G. Agarwal, Group Chairman, Dhanuka Agritech Limited. And Mr. Dhanuka will be joining us shortly. Now, participants are requested to mute themselves and turn off video upon joining so that we get a clear, audio and video of our distinguished speakers. This is an interactive panel discussion. Hence, all the participants will get an opportunity to ask questions, discuss, and please post your question in the chat box. The speaker will get back to your queries. Thank you to our webinar partner, Indofil Industries Limited. Also to industry support partner, Dhanuka Agritech Limited. Now, I would like to request my colleague, Mr. Orno Brai, to play a small video of Indofil Industries Limited. Orno, please.
Yes. तो सबके घरों में खाने के मजे ऐसे मुश्किल समय में उम्मीद के अरमान दिलों में सजे न होते। ये माँ की रोटी से प्यार ना होता, देश भर में कोई व्यापार ना होता, तुम ना होते तो लोग घर पे रुके ना होते, इस लड़ाई में एक साथ खड़े कैसे होते, तुम ना होते तो खेत सूखे रह जाते, बाकी तो छोड़ो शायद इंसान ही भूखे रह जाते। गांव इसलिए बहुत खास है क्योंकि हम हमारे किसानों के पास है और इस बात का हमें पूरा कुछ करके दिखाने का वक्त आया है फिर से, चलेगी नहीं बिल्कुल इस मुश्किल से, बढ़ते जाएंगे आगे एक साथ गर्व से, क्योंकि हम हैं one into the दिल से।
Thank you, Arnob. Now I request Mr. Joynto Chakraborty to set the context of the program and deliver the speech. Sir, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is really a matter of great pleasure to welcome you all to this first online colloquium on agriculture by the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries. And I'm really honored that Mr. Kondiria has taken our invitations and he is with us today. Sir, thank you for accepting our invitations and being with us today. And I'm also expecting Mr. R.G. Agrawal to join very shortly, and also grateful to him for accepting our invitations to address this August gathering on the important bills of agriculture. Those have been recently introduced by the Government of India. Before going to this thing, I just like to say a few words about the Bengal Chamber of Commerce. The Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry was set up in 1853. However, the chamber origins date back to 1833, when its founding forefathers came together to form the first association of its kind in the country, which was later formalized as the Bengal Chamber. For the last 1.5 centuries, the chamber has played a pioneering role as helmsman steering the evolution of commerce and industry in India. The Bengal Chamber of Commerce, through its Agriculture and Rural Development Committee, has been continuously interacting with large number of farmers producer organizations across the state. And this chamber, with its endeavor, has created a brand name, Rural Connect, for connecting rural products and producers with the potential market players through various programs, training sessions, and focus group discussions. It participates actively in the policy-making decisions of the governments and other associate bodies also. Now, coming straightway to the today's program, that is India's new agricultural reform, the way forward. Objective is that in the paper, in the media, everywhere, discussions on these bills, and lots of people are participating and telling lots of ideas, their apprehensions, their good stories about this thing. But somewhere we find that exact stories are not coming out of these discussions because lots of issues are being dragged to the politics and other pertinent subjects also. So straightway after going to this, we have think the 3 reforms bills have been placed. One is Reform APMC Act to remove restrictions on where farmer must sell their produce. This is one of the biggest bill India has produced on agriculture. Delisting rice, wheat, potato, tomato, oilseeds from Essential Commodity Act, removing cap on storage limit by private stakeholders. And third is the contract farming. These 3 reform bills have been tabled by government as now has become the bills also. In 1991, the reform left out the farm sector. Agriculture remains shackled by a maze of controls and subsidies actually. As a result, the share of agriculture in output has fallen to 15% of GDP, but over 42% of the workforce still toils away on the farm. Now it is a debate whether agriculture should be measured by the GDP number or not. There is a big subject which we don't like to go there. But overall, it has not improved at all. It has remained stagnant or going down also. Where the average size of the farm size is India is about 1 hectare, and 86% of farms are under 2 hectares with limited surplus to sell. But even those that do get squeezed by a controlled marketing system also, where traders sometimes form cartels to squeeze farmers and ensure price information is not transparent also. High mandi price, mandi license fees, an important source of revenue to state government, also restricted entry of new traders and keep competition low. The new laws does not abolish this system, but simply give the farmers the choice to opt out and sell their produce anywhere. To be successful, farmers need information and credit to help market their produce also. We are recently seeing the movement, the protest, everything has shifted from APMC to the MSP sector also. So we will hear the details from the distinguished speakers here about their opinion on those things, because where 6% farmers are beneficiaries of the MSP, how it is going to change their lives. So it has been clear to policymakers now for a long time that the next leap in agriculture is not on the production side, but on the marketing side. We have produced enough grain, 302 million tons of grains we are producing. So we have enough foods. How state channelize their energies to provide their farmers, communities access to newer market, value add their products, and build better capacities to improve efficiency will determine the future growth trajectory also. But agriculture is a very sensitive subject. Electoral competitiveness of the past 1 or 2 decades has turned a blind eye to the economic prudence of this sector. Freebies, subsidies, doles, and loan waivers have dominated the political conversation, throwing caution to the wind also. In media, we are listening to economists, politicians, academicians, corporates, but they are explaining from their individual perspective also. Let us hear from the experts on same, putting priority on good governance and farmers' interest in priority also. So here, first I will introduce you in detail to Mr. Ram Kaundinya. Mr. Kaundinya is an expert in the field of management, especially in the business of agriculture. He has a total corporate experience of 36 years at very senior positions. He is an author, strategic management consultant, teacher, and policy analyst in India. Mr. Kaundinya, he was the managing director. He did his agriculture background. He did his undergraduate in agriculture science from the Andhra Pradesh Agriculture University. Then postgraduate diploma in management with specialization in agriculture from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Mr. Kaundinya was the managing director and CEO of Advanta Limited, an Indian seed company with global footprint. The area of operation extended from Australia in the east to Argentina in the west. He traveled extensively across the world and got exposed to agriculture and culture in different parts of the world. Mr. Kaundinya was the managing director of Emergent Genetics India, an American PE firm. And he was also the managing director of Cyanamid Agro, an American agrochemical company also. He has always been associated with the various industry associations. He was the chairman of CropLife India. He was the director of Association of Seed Industry and the chairman of Agriculture Group of Agriculture Biotech Industry also. He has been at the forefront of the expansion of biotechnology applications in agriculture in India, served as a member of the MS Swaminathan task force that developed the biotechnology policy for Indian agriculture between 2002 and 2004. He has been involved in the academics for the last 30 years, frequent guest lecturer at various management institutes, including IIM Ahmedabad. He teaches marketing and corporate strategy to MBA students in different institutions also. Mr. Kaundinya is currently consults independently to various VC and PE funds also. And recently, in February 2019, he was appointed a member of the committee set by the principal scientific advisor to the Prime Minister of India to suggest strategies for agricultural policies and action plan for a secure and sustainable agriculture under the chairmanship of Dr. Raj Paroda. The report is submitted in August 2019. He is now the Director General of Federation of Seed Industry of India. So with this background, I think there is nothing a better person we could have found who could explain about the impact of these 3 bills in agricultural sector in coming days also. So now I humbly request Mr. Kondinia to present his thoughts to this august audience. Actually, Mr. Kondinia, please.
Thank you very much, Jayanta. Thanks for that very generous introduction. I hope all of you can hear me clearly.
Yes,
so,
we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think this is a subject which is very current and made unnecessarily controversial, but I think it is a subject which actually has a deep impact on Indian agriculture and Indian economy as a whole. So I have a few slides to share my thoughts. So I'll just start sharing that. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, you can see.
So we are talking about the new agricultural reforms, and basically Indian agriculture has seen some huge success. We have increased our production multifold. Today we are producing more than 300 million tons of food grains. Fruits and vegetables we produce more than 320 million tons. We have more than 60 million tons. Actually, we have 80 million tons of buffer stock right now. Milk production went up to 184 million tons. Fish production went up to 12.5 million tons. Eggs, we produce more than 100 billion eggs currently per annum. Agriculture produces 30 lakh crores worth of GVA, what is called the gross value add to the GDP. We have 14 crore farmers. 87% farmers have less than 2 acres each. It is also interesting that government procures about 70 million tons per year. That is the government's procurement system. And food grain stocks in many points of time exceed 60-70 million tons, although the norm is only 40 million tons. There's a huge infrastructure and practices and processes which have been built over a period of time. But the red signal we have to watch is that we still import 75,000 crores worth of edible oils every year, which actually speaks of the skewed crop portfolio we have. We have emphasized too much on rice and wheat, because of which we carry so much of inventory of rice and wheat. And on the other hand, we import edible oils, which actually grow with less water. And we cultivate more of wheat and rice, which need more water. And we export almost 50,000 crores worth of rice, which means actually rice which we produce by consuming 5 liters of water per kilo of rice, we're actually exporting all that rice. So I think there is a bit of a skewed distribution of crop portfolio here. 1.7 lakh crores worth of food subsidy bill we have every year. That means there are a lot of people who need food at lower prices, affordable prices. 80,000 crores worth of fertilizer subsidy. So it's a sector which has been, like Jayanta mentioned earlier, a lot of subsidy goes through this sector, but many farmers have remained poor and vulnerable. This is a fact. One of the main reasons is the low profitability of operations. Farming is not profitable for many farmers in the country. That is a fact. And because of that, youth have lost interest in agriculture. Many of farmers' children don't want to do agriculture. There is high use of natural resources. We have used water and soil very carelessly and very recklessly in our agriculture. And on the other hand, we are not using modern technology and science. So the yields have been stagnant for the last 15-20 years. So we have not seen much yield increases except in cotton, where we had the benefit of GM technology. We have 30% post-harvest losses. This is mainly because of lack of infrastructure. We don't have post-harvesting storage. We don't have a lot of emphasis on primary processing of agricultural produce at the village level. That would save actually quite a lot of produce from wastage, and also it will add value to farmers, but we don't have that. We don't have enough of cold chain infrastructure and logistical infrastructure. Lack of financial and insurance services for the farmers, because the banks and financial institutions don't feel comfortable giving a lot of money to the farmers, because the cost of reaching them is high and also the NPAs are high. So these are all a few things which are not right with our agriculture. So, but there are a few things that are happening currently, especially after COVID. So if we look at this decade, which is a new decade we are starting, unfortunately, the decade has started on the wrong foot with COVID. But COVID is actually driving some of the changes in the consumption patterns. People are now more worried about nutrition and immunity-based foods. There is a preference for plant-based nutrition compared to animal-based nutrition. I think there is a huge change that is taking place globally in the dietary habits of people, partly forced by COVID. The process was set in motion earlier, but it is now being accelerated because of COVID. Traceability of food is gaining a lot of importance, and this is something which we must note because this is something which has a huge impact on the future of agriculture. Everybody, including you and me, we want to know how the food has reached us. What is the trace of that food from the field to the fork? Consumers, that means we are willing to pay higher price for value-added products with reliable ingredients and with the traceability being transparent to us. Touchless operations, this is more related to COVID. So we have to re-engineer agriculture a little bit. I think that is very important to actually make farming profitable, and our farmers should be competitive in the international markets. There is a huge opportunity for us to even compete. We all know that wheat, rice, and maize, and cotton, and some of these crops are international crops, global crops. If the farmer is not competitive with global farmers, it's like I always give this example that when the Europeans came to India, they came with cannons, and the Indian kings were fighting them with swords, right? So there is no match between the two weapons that they were using. Similarly, our Indian farmer doesn't have access to modern technology and science, and he's fighting with outside farmers who have all the technology and science to help them to grow higher yields, better crops, better quality at lower cost. So I think we have to help the farmers to be more competitive. Natural resource conservation is very important. Water and soil both have to be preserved. We have to reform output markets because profitability is what? Profitability is revenue minus cost. We all know that, right? So in the first point, if we are able to increase yields and improve the price in this point, the revenue goes up and the cost should be reduced according to using modern technology. So if we are able to manage these three variables better, it will improve the profitability of the farmer. So reformation of output markets and creating collective bargaining strength for the farmers through FPOs, contract farming, and scalable technologies, market access and value chain development. These are all very important points. I mean, each point is a very big point. I mean, I can talk about each point for 1 hour, but just briefly, I'm saying that all these are very important things to improve the farmers' profitability. Mechanization and digitization are also happening in a big way because of the shortage of labor, and labor cost has gone up. Today, most of the crops, labor cost is 40 to 60% of the total cost of the farmer. So all this is the context in which we are looking at the reforms. Modern infrastructure has to be developed through private sector participation, drying yards, silo storages, warehousing, roads, solar power-based energy, various things we are lacking. This is what is called farm gate infrastructure we are lacking. That has to be strengthened. Non-farm income of the farmers has to be strengthened. Digital financial and insurance services have to be brought in because that is something which will actually help the farmer to leapfrog from the old systems of depending on the village level money lender to taking loans and credit from top class financial institutions. I think it is a digital technology which will actually help us to do things which we could not do earlier. Crop portfolio has to change. This I already mentioned that we have to reduce rice and wheat at the national level, and we have to increase oil seeds and reduce our edible oil imports. This is very important, not only from the point of view of economy, but also from the point of view of our soils, because our soils are damaged due to excessive use of water and fertilizers in wheat and rice, and we have to change that crop portfolio. Export-oriented value chain development also has to take place. All these will actually improve the income of the farmers. He is able to discover better prices because of many of these things that I'm talking about. In this context, we should look at the recent agri reforms because there are some changes which the government wants to bring in the ecosystem through the reforms. 1991 reforms which helped the industry did not address agriculture. That is a known fact. And there is a need that we have to carry out agri-market reforms. These are already delayed by 20 years. I should say that these reforms should have happened 20 years back. We are talking of them now. But it is better late than never. I think it is still important for us to understand the implications of this. What are the objectives of these reforms? As spelled out by the government and also as spelled out by many economists, there is also a recommendation by many reports which have been submitted to the government, and it is also a continuous process. There is a chronology of reports which have happened in the last 10 years, which have actually recommended this type of reforms. So to improve farmers' freedom, okay, so and allow them to sell nationally for a better price realization, open and a competitive market for the farmer, and to provide a greater role for private sector, to actually bring competition from the private sector, within private sector and between private sector and the public sector. So that competition will actually improve the prices. Connect farmers and consumers through shorter supply chains. You all know that today, by the time the produce reaches us from the field, it changes hands at least 8 to 9 times. That is what we call as the supply chain. So that must come down. And the farmers get less than 30% of the price we pay for any product. This is what is called the farmer's share of the consumer price is less than 30% today, and it changes hands 8 to 9 times. So though that if we can shorten that, farmer's share of consumer price must go above 60% if he has to be. So this shorter supply chain will actually help both the consumer and the farmer, because it's not necessary that with shorter supply chains, consumer prices will go up. They will not go up. Actually, the consumer will get benefit as well as farmer will get benefit. We have to create necessary farm gate infrastructure for storage, trading, transportation, and everything through these reforms. We have to break the grip of vested interest on farmers' price discovery and connect him to markets to improve his income. I will talk more about that in the next slide. Contract farming has to be promoted because that will bring value-added agriculture. What happens is that we talked about it earlier, that we need nutritionally enhanced foods. To produce such foods, you need what is called identity preserved supply chain system. From the farm to the fork, you have to preserve the identity of such foods. That is not possible without contract farming. And contract farming will also help in value chain development for exports as well as for domestic markets. Farmers will get technology support and assured prices through contract farming. So these are all the objectives with which the reforms have been carried out. One second, this is not moving. So I will stop screening and restart again screening because it was not. So the first thing that government has announced is a 1 lakh crore rupees fund to be provided for funding agricultural infrastructure projects. This is what is called farm gate infrastructure. A 1 lakh crore rupees fund has been set up. This is available to primary agricultural cooperative societies, FPOs, agri entrepreneurs, startups. Anyone can actually go and take this soft loan from bank and use it as an impetus to set up farm gate infrastructure. Like, all these reforms will not take full shape unless the farm gate infrastructure improves. That infrastructure has to be improved through these investments. So I think there is a need for private investment, and government is willing to help with that through this 1 lakh crore rupees fund. So this is the first thing that they have announced. I think this was announced in the month of June. by the finance minister. So this is something on which now the banks are giving money. So I think this is something which one must look at as a kind of a precursor for the reforms. Essential Commodities Act. This act is also amended as a part of the reforms now. This act is a very old act, actually. 1955 it was done. But actually this was started by the British during the Second World War to have control on the food items which are critical for the population or for the army. So they had actually done this, and Government of India had actually regularized it as a Essential Commodities Act 55. What this act gave the power to the government was to impose stock limits on different food items, so that anybody, whether it is a trader or a processor or a farmer, anybody cannot hold large amount of stocks beyond the stock limits. So this has actually resulted in a situation where the private investment in warehousing or processing facilities, things like that, has remained low. And the government was forced to invest more in warehousing and things like that because of this. So this is now amended, and they have deregulated many of the foodstuffs, including cereals, edible oils, oil seeds, pulses, onions, potato. There are no stock limits now. And these stock limits also will not apply to processors or value chain participants subject to their installed capacity. So if you have installed a capacity of 1,000 tons, you can hold 1,000 tons. So earlier those limits were there, now that is not applicable. But the government has retained the right to impose stock limits under very exceptional circumstances, like there are natural calamities, famine, and surge in prices. For example, as soon as this was being passed by the parliament, at the same time government had actually banned the export of onion because onion prices were going up. I think government always has that power to take such actions, but this act actually removes a lot of restrictions which have prevented the investments and participation of private sector in several storage and infrastructure, transportation, particularly storage infrastructure. The private sector was prevented from doing. So this is removed now. I think it's a very good thing. Ideally, this should have been completely, this act should have been removed, but I think this level of reform itself is a good indication, and we can expect some good results out of this. But then the next one is before I talk of the next act which was passed, let's look at what are the problems that we face with the current APMC structure. You know, agricultural produce marketing committees, APMCs, these are controlled by an act, and all of you know that agriculture is a state subject. So the states have the full control on agriculture, implementation of the policies. So APMC Act is a state act, and APMC mandis have been set up by different states using this act, and farmers are attached to a mandi. Farmers from a particular geography are attached to a mandi. They are not expected to sell outside that mandi. So they bring the produce to the mandi, and there are licensed traders who operate in that mandi, and they know that the farmer cannot take it anywhere else. So it's actually a kind of a bondage which has actually restricted farmers' options to sell it to somebody else in some other mandi or to some other trader. So this is actually, it is very simple that if you are prevented from exercising any option, the buyer will actually exploit you. That is a very simple thing which has been happening. You know, APMCs mandis started almost 100 years back. In 1930s, it started. So for all these years, while the British used it that time to exploit Indians, but I think these things have continued even after independence, that farmers, of course, we followed a different economic model under which the government played a bigger role in these things. So I think that also we have to understand the history of economic development in India, that till 1991, we followed a model in which government's role in these kind of things was very high. So accordingly, these have been set up, and they have actually led to a situation where the mandis actually control the farmers. Mandis collect their tax, whether the sale happens in the mandi or outside the mandi, 1.5% or more. In fact, on rice and wheat in Punjab and Haryana, it goes even up to 6-7%. The total cost for the farmer. So this is paid by the farmer. Commission agents, they collect commission from the farmer for selling, connecting him to the buyer. And sometimes they collect from both seller and buyer their commission, although legally they're expected to collect only from one. Many of the commission agents, and they're called aditiyas in some of the markets, some of the states, they are also private money lenders. So they give money to the farmers, and some of them also supply agricultural inputs to the farmers on credit. So it's like a very closed loop system. It's a system in which the farmer is taking money and inputs from an aditiya, from a commission agent. The same commission agent is buying his produce back through the mandi system. And the mandi system is a complete a system in which he doesn't have any option to sell to anybody else. So I think it's a system in which very high interest rates are charged and the farmers are not able to get out of that. Another thing is quality assessment at mandis, because when you buy agricultural produce, you pay price according to the quality. This quality assessment, how it is done, it is also very subjective, and people use very subjective methods to assess the quality and grade, decide the grade of the produce, and it is very exploitative. Even if the farmer sells outside the mandi, still he has to pay the mandi tax, either he pays or the buyer pays. So this is also something. There's no doubt that the entire mandi tax is a revenue generator for the state, but it is also going out of the farmer's pocket. So that also we have to understand. So the result of all this is that price carteling has happened, lower price realizations for farmers, improper quality assessment, distress sale by farmers, and exploitation. Because once he brings it to the market, it's very difficult for the farmer to take it back if he doesn't get a good price. So there is inadequate storage facility for him to keep the produce there and wait for the right price. Even if he keeps it there under financial distress, he has to sell it quickly. So he will try to dispose it off. So it's a kind of a vicious cycle in which the farmer is caught. So these are the situations which we are trying to handle through the reform. So to address this, they have brought this act, Farmers Produce Trade. It's a very long name. So this act actually is intended to create an ecosystem which where the farmer and the trader both enjoy freedom of choice of sales and purchases of agri produce. This is a very fundamental thing, that farmer has a choice to sell to anybody and anywhere in the country. This is also something which is not very new, in the sense that Karnataka did this a few years back. Bihar did this a few years back. So many other states have not done this. So this APMC Act had to be amended for this purpose, but many states were unwilling to amend that act. So that's why Center had to come up with this act, which bypasses some of the APMC acts of the states. So it gives freedom to the farmer to sell anywhere. It also promotes barrier-free interstate and intrastate trade. You know that many times agricultural produce cannot move from one state to another state. So those barriers are removed now, and people can do their business outside the physical premises of the markets. Private industry is encouraged to set up private mandis with modern infrastructure. So there can be a parallel mandi in the same place, which is set up by private industry. It need not be a very huge one. Even a small processing plant can be declared as a private mandi. Farmers will not be charged any cess or levy for sale of their produce and will not have to bear transport costs. So these are clearly made, provisions are made in the Act. The next one is very important. The bill also proposes an electronic trading in transaction platform for ensuring a seamless trade electronically. All of you are aware that the Government of India started this electronic platform called eNAM. eNAM is there for the last 4 or 5 years. It is still covering less than 1,000 mandis, while we have more than 22,000 mandis in the country. So it is still to be scaled up. But at the same time, there are many private people who have set up digital platforms for selling output. So what the bill says is that they will develop an ecosystem for electronic trading to be used, electronic trading platforms to be used because if you are in a village in some place and you want to sell your produce in some other state, you can do it only on an electronic platform. So electronic platforms, in fact, there are provisions in the Act which show that government will actually work with some of these electronic platforms to bring them in an integrated manner to help the farmers. In addition to mandis, freedom to do trading at farm gate, farmer can sell from his field, from a cold storage, from a warehouse, from processing units, anywhere. Farmer will be able to shorten supply chains to market. This I already mentioned earlier, thereby eliminating intermediaries, resulting in full realization of price for the farmer. So I think these are all the things which are there in the Act. When you read the Act, you can see all this. However, there are some concerns which have been expressed, and I will try to address some of them. The first concern is that MSP system will be discontinued. This is a concern by some of the farmers, but government has announced repeatedly that MSP will continue. It will not be, so on the right side I have given how it is addressed. Government has announced that MSP will continue and it will not be withdrawn. Although it is a different matter completely that MSP system, was it efficient? Was it an efficient market mechanism? Did it actually benefit the country? Is a completely separate subject. I don't want to go into that right now because there are many reports on how the MSP system has actually vitiated the markets and has not helped anybody in the end. But right now, let us take it that farmers want it, especially those who grow rice and wheat. Because those are the farmers who got mostly benefited by MSP and also by the procurement. Government procurement, also there is a concern that government procurement will stop. It is not possible for government procurement to stop because government has to procure 70 million tons every year. They have to procure from mandis only. For PDS and welfare programs, government, if you read the latest economic survey which was presented to the parliament, it gives last 5 years numbers of how much grain was distributed through PDS and welfare programs. It is almost 60 million tons every year. So 60 million tons of grain is getting distributed. That means government has to buy at least 70 million tons they will buy, or even more. Many times they buy more because that's how we landed up with 80, 90 million tons of holding stock right now. So all this has to happen only through mandis. Even now that is happening and that will continue to happen. So there is no way mandis, there is no way either procurement will stop, or there is no way the next point which people say that mandis will collapse because no farmer will go to the mandi. That is also wrong because mandis will continue because MSP will operate only through mandis, procurement will operate only through mandis. So mandi system will continue. What we are seeing is that the Act only brings a parallel system into place. That parallel system will provide an option to the customer, to the farmer here, to use a private mandi whenever he feels that it is more beneficial for him. So mandis will not collapse. They will lose some revenue definitely because some of the commodities will go out of those mandis. But mandis also have to reinvent themselves. Mandis are very outdated. They don't use modern technology. Their infrastructure is insufficient. So they have to also upgrade themselves. They have to make themselves smart, get rid of all the cartels that are existing in the mandi and upgrade themselves. This is very much similar to what happened when insurance, for example, was privatized. So when private insurance companies were allowed, LIC did not go to the town saying that no, we are affected. What LIC did was very phenomenal. LIC actually used that occasion to improve themselves. And today LIC is still the best. I mean, many of us still go to LIC, even though there are private people, insurance companies operating. I think that is what mandis have to look at. Mandis must become more efficient, and procurement and MSP operations will still continue through the mandis, but mandis have to become more efficient. That is the only way they can actually compete with the private. Private buyers outside mandi will not be paying mandi tax. This is a loss of revenue for states. Yes, it will be a loss of revenue for states. There is no doubt about that. And there is nothing we can do about that. I think we have to choose between states' revenue and farmers' revenue. I think that is a stand that we'll have to take in this case. Next point is, next 2 points are very important. Private buyers outside will exploit by forcing farmers to sell at lower prices. Farmers will not have capacity to negotiate. MSP should apply even in private mandis. This is what some of the people are asking for. We are forgetting that the private sector is not one company. Private sector consists of many companies and many players, and there will be competition among them. So that competition also will improve prices. They can't just bring down the prices to the farmers. So because of the competition, they will have to offer better prices. Whatever is the market price, MSP cannot be applied. I think that is not a good suggestion, because the moment you bring MSP there, then you are killing the market that you are trying to create. You will be killing the free market that you are trying to create, open market that you are trying to create. So MSP application will not be there, but farmers are free to sell either in the private mandi or in APMC mandis. So I think we have to leave that choice to the farmer. The farmer is a very intelligent person. I think many of us think that we have to go to the rescue of the farmer because he is gullible, he can't make out good and bad and things like that. That is very wrong. Having dealt with farmers for 40 years, I know very well that farmers are very intelligent. They will make intelligent choices. We just have to remove restrictions on them. Then they will make the right choices and they will start earning better money. So that is another one. But the next one, fly-by-night operators will enter and exploit farmers, and they will not pay him and they will run away. This is another thing which is being propagated. There will be a kind of a registration system for private buyers, private players who will be coming in. This is there under Section 17(1) of the Act that is passed by the Parliament. If you refer to that, it provides that the government has the right to start a system of registration of all the people, and also to make sure that they have sufficient capacity to deal commercial dealings with the farmers. And so I think there is enough provision made there. There is also a provision made there in the same this thing, that there is a penalty system if he is not paid in time and if he is not paid properly. There is a dispute resolution mechanism. So all are provided there. There is another thing that says that APMC mandis, outside APMC mandis, the private mandis, what price will be prevailing? That will not be known. So there will be lack of information. That is also not correct, because the Act very clearly is, like I said earlier, the digital platforms will be used and digital platforms will be encouraged along with ENAM. So private digital e-commerce platforms will be integrated with ENAM to capture all transactions. Price information will be available in a central server, and that there will be systems which will be developed to share that. APMC mandis provide price information. Currently, that is a system which is used as a benchmark for the farmers to negotiate their prices. A new system of logging price information from mandis and private players on digital platforms is to be developed. I'm sure that if you read the Act, actually it has enough provisions for all this. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that what we have got in the BEAR Act, which is passed by the Parliament, is only a starting point. All of you know that every act is followed by framing of rules. The rules are the ones which actually detail all these things. I think we will have to wait for the rules to come. Rules will have provisions for all these things. The second act is the Farmers Empowerment and Facilitation of Price Assurance and Farm Services Bill, which actually is for promoting contract cultivation, contract farming. This empowers farmers to engage with processors, wholesalers, aggregators, large retailers, exporters, with all the people on a level playing field. Price assurance to farmers even before. So before actually you sow the crop, you sign a contract with a buyer. So this actually, there is an assured price in this. If the market price is higher, then the farmer will get the higher market price over and above the minimum price. But it protects him from falling prices. Transfer the risk. The risk is transferred from farmer to the buyer actually in this through the contract. It enables the farmer to access modern technology, better seed and other inputs which are supplied by the sponsor. This Act is very clear on that. It reduces cost of marketing and improves income of farmers. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that since it becomes what we call a closed loop system, the banks and financial institutions will give money to the farmer, will lend to the farmer much more readily and easily compared to a normal cultivation system. So here, because they can recover the money from the company which is entering into contract, there will be more credit flow to the farmer in this system. Effective dispute resolution mechanism has been provided at district level. So the SDM and the DM, the district magistrate, and are empowered to settle all these things. This will actually give impetus to research and new technology in agricultural sector. So this is something which is what is expected from this act. But there are some concerns expressed, definitely. The concerns are farmers are not equipped to deal with large private companies for contracts and litigations. If there is a litigation, will they be able to deal with it? These are concern. I think FPOs is the way forward. The government had already announced that 10,000 FPOs will have to be created. So that FPOs have to be strengthened through capacity building, and capacity building exercises have to be done for both farmers and FPOs in a big way. This is something which state governments and private entrepreneurs must do, so that they are strengthened in terms of commercial acumen, how to make contracts, how to do businesses, how to do their digital literacy has to be improved. So all this capacity building has to be done for FPOs and farmers. There is also a district level business support system from government should be there to facilitate this thing. And all the contracts have to be logged in. So there is a digital system which the Act also talks about, that all contracts will have to be registered in the system. Then there is another concern that there is no guarantee that private corporates will pay the farmer above MSP. Yeah, there is no guarantee because it will be a negotiated price. MSP, again, if we bring it here, it will kill the free market and restrict the private investments into this. Competition, like I mentioned earlier, among private players will actually give a better price to the farmer. Some people say that this may not be a big opportunity. Large number of farmers will still remain out of this. Yes, large number will remain out of this, but I think over a period of time, this will grow. This will grow into a big opportunity for exports, for food processing industry, for various value chains which will develop. All that will go through this. And I mentioned earlier also that the value-added products cultivation will also come under this. So all that will be under this. Dispute resolution, I already mentioned, SDM is the primary person who will settle disputes. There is appellate authority, district magistrate has been named as the appellate authority for this. So the act is very clear that this dispute resolution mechanism will be put in place. So this is what I have addressed so far about the acts and the concerns and the answers to the concerns. So let me, my last two slides, I want to just address that what is it that the governments must do in addition to what is in the act, whether it is done by central government or state government. First is a digital registration system for all private buyers of the agricultural produce. I think this is there, provision is there in the act. This must be done. This can be done by the states. Actually, the act says, the Contract Cultivation Act says that it gives full powers to the states to start this kind of digital registration system. Mandatory registration of all contracts is also there very clearly in the act, that must be registered with a designated authority in each district. Capacity building of farmers and FPOs. This is something which I talked about earlier also. I think this is something on which a lot of emphasis must be laid. We have to create a national grid of private digital platforms for selling output with ENAM. So combining these two, the ENAM system and the private enterprises should be combined and integrated into a grid, making it available to the farmers to conduct their interstate trade. When you do online trade like this, you also need online quality assessment technologies. Such technologies are available today. Now, there is a huge change that is happening in the environment on digital technologies. The agri-tech startups, which are coming in a big way. And if there is time, I will talk more about that later. But right now, it is sufficient for me to mention that the entire investment which has gone into agri-tech enterprises, 76% of that investment has gone into agri-tech enterprises which handle output, agricultural output. So that is something which is coming in a big way, and quality assessment is a part of that. We also need a young, qualified and experienced business manager in each DM's office to help farmers and FPOs in the district with making contracts with private parties. I think some kind of hand-holding is needed. This should be provided by the government. Mandis should upgrade infrastructure, modernize their processes, dismantle the nexus of traders and make it farmer friendly. This is also something which must be done by the states. This is still work in progress. This is not the end, and nothing will happen overnight. This will take 2, 3, 4 years for the reforms to take full shape. Even the 91 reforms, by the time the full impact was felt, it was 5, 6 years afterwards. So I think it will take time. Farm gate and private mandi infrastructure has to develop. This infrastructure will take next 2, 3 years to actually develop, and private investments have to be attracted. So these private investments cannot be attracted if the state governments don't provide enabling environment in the state. Private investments will come only if state governments provide that enabling environment. So I think that is something which all states have to do. New business models will come up and they will evolve during this decade. It's not that something unknown to us type of business models can come to utilize these reforms and help the farmers and benefit the farmers. There are various value chains which have potential to be actually scaled up in the country, and I have listed some of them, not necessary to go through all of them, but chilies in Andhra Pradesh, vegetables in Bengal and Maharashtra and some of these places, vegetable oils in MP, Rajasthan, Gujarat and some of these states, some of the fruits in Tamil Nadu, AP, Maharashtra. These are all value chains which can be developed, which will be developed because of these reforms for both domestic markets and export markets. States, like I mentioned, have to create enabling environment to attract private investments with predictable policy support. It should not happen that one party supports and another party opposes and then people are confused. This private people should not get confused that where should I invest? Should I invest or not? Crop diversification must happen. I think this is something which these reforms will push farmers to diversify from rice and wheat, which is an MSP and government procurement support-based crops. They will shift to what is called demand-driven agriculture. Agriculture should move towards demand-driven agriculture. That means they will produce what is demanded by the customer. So it will be good for our soils, for our environment, and for the economy. So finally, it's a long way to go. It's nothing that it is a journey which we are just starting. Basically, farmer and farming have to be respected in the society. Currently, we don't respect them enough. This is one of the issues we have. We don't mind paying 200 rupees for a movie ticket, but we mind paying 50 rupees for onion, right? So that is our mentality right now. The consumers consumers means like people like you and me who live in the cities. We have to allow shifting of terms of trade. From currently, the terms of trade are highly in favor of urban people, consumers. That's why government takes these actions like stopping on exports when the price touches 50 rupees. How many people in the urban society can not afford 50 rupees for onion is a different question, but it is these kind of things which actually are creating problems. Farming has to become profitable like a business. So farmer is producing, it is a production system. He is producing for somebody to buy from him. It is like running any business. He should make money in that. If he is not making money, then the utopian this thing that farmer is the annadata, so he should always be providing us with food. But we don't take care of him, so that cannot work. We have to farm and consume in harmony with nature. I think these are all things which have to happen. So hopefully all this will happen because of these reforms. And then I'm very hopeful actually that these reforms will open up some of these things during this decade. So that's about it from my side. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kondinia, for your detailed presentations on the 3 agricultural bills. And you have raised lots of I should say, clarifications on the bills and also the way forward for the bills and how it should take a shape in long term. I think it is an excellent presentation, Mr. Kondinia. There are a few queries have come from the audience. There are some few queries have come from the audience. I request you if you can address on those things, Mr. Kondinia.
Sure.
That first query has come. Will the concept of common market for agriculture work in a diverse country like India? The ground reality sometimes goes far deeper than mere written policies. Your viewpoint on this?
Sorry, I didn't follow that. What is that? Will
the concept of common market for agriculture work in a diverse country like India? The ground
I think the
realities-
markets will still remain very regional and very local. We produce different types of commodities. We produce rice, wheat, maize, and cotton and soybeans, which are international commodities. Their markets will be influenced by global prices and global supply-demand situation. There will be some semblance of those markets across states in the country. But if you go to the next ones, which are like pulses and some of those crops which we grow for our national requirements, there will be a little bit of difference between states because those who produce and those who consume, there will be a difference in markets there. But if you go to something like vegetables, which are very, very local, and except for tomato, potato, and onion, which are transported across the country, most of the other vegetables are very local. And so there the markets will be of a different character. So I think, for example, already in vegetables, a lot of private entrepreneurs have started operating. They are collecting, they have got catchment areas, they have got many of the farmers on their apps, and they have contracts with the farmers, they collect the vegetables, they supply them to the city-based retail chains or to big basket type of people. That is happening already. I think vegetables will undergo a huge change first. There it will be much faster, but others will take some more time. But national market will be only for a few products.
Thank you. There's another question. You mentioned that 87 farmers have less than 2-acre land holding and low produce. How could they benefit from these reforms?
In fact, they are the ones who should get maximum benefit because one is that, like I mentioned, they have to get a better price because of this new system. If they grow crops, we should not look at only Punjab and Haryana farmers in this. We have to look at farmers who are coming from huge rain-fed areas in Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana, and there are many places, Karnataka, northern Karnataka. There are many places where farmers grow crops which are highly rain dependent, and they are all very small farmers. So if there are people going to them, making deals, buying from their doorstep, I think many of the small farmers will get benefited. But the precaution, as I mentioned already, is that there has to be some hand holding for them. There has to be some, consolidated leverage they should have through FPOs. I think that is something which work is yet to be done, and that will take, I think now the FPO formation and FPO capacity building will pick up speed because of these reforms. Like I mentioned, it will take 2-3 years. It will not happen overnight.
Thank you, Mr. Kondinia. Now we will take another 2-3 questions. Mr. RG Agrawal has joined already.
Sure.
So we will be taking, another gentleman has asked, could the regulation have thought of modifying the reform to incentivize resource, that is water and soil conservation, as well as in some ways, which is likely to be big concern in near future, as you also mentioned?
Actually, in the reforms, it is difficult to address them. But this is a recommendation we made. While introducing me, you said that I was in this committee headed by Dr. Paroda, and we made our submission to the Prime Minister's office. That Government of India and as well as many states have come out with this program of direct benefit transfer, DBT. They are transferring 6,000 rupees per acre and then 10,000 rupees per acre and things like that. Some of this money should go towards incentivizing farmers to do the right things in the field, to save water or to, because we have to make sure that this money is used for the purpose of agricultural improvement, improving their own agricultural practices, promoting good agricultural practices. So these are some of the things which can be done. In the reforms, it is difficult to do it, but I think one way it will be done is that if suppose there is a demand for organic food, for example, okay, and the guy who is actually the company which is in organic food business will now go and make contracts with farmers to grow organic food or to grow, let's say, nutritionally enhanced food, or to grow some crops which may need less water. Because right now there is a lot of, I didn't go into all those details, but there is a lot of demand for protein-based foods, and so I think the future will be very high for very great for pulse-based cultivation. All that will happen. I think some of those changes, like I mentioned, if we go away from rice and wheat to some extent, if a balance is brought into our crop portfolio, consumption of water and fertilizers will come down.
Another question. Do you think, Mr. Continia, that corporate farming will get some benefits to our vegetable and fruit farmers?
I mentioned already that I think vegetable farmers are already being benefited to some extent. Now it will be done more freely, more on a larger scale. So far it has been done on a smaller scale. I think this type of models should come everywhere. Like even in Bengal, for example, all the vegetables, small farmers are there, small land holdings. They all should be brought under the umbrella of some of these what are called supply chain players who will connect them to the market.
And last questions. In the new reform, is it possible to buy agriculture land by non-farmer?
I don't think the reform talks about it. I think that is very much a state subject, so they should be able to deal with that in each state accordingly.
And one question from our side, that do you think that the MSP has distorted the crop diversifications in India and also is a threat for the nutritional security of India because it is not diverging to horticultural?
Yeah, very much. Because if you look at all our irrigation projects, wherever any irrigation project was done, the moment the project is completed, the catchment area of that project will immediately start growing rice or wheat or sugarcane.
Yeah.
Right. So there is, along with creating such large investment projects, we don't have a plan of which crops should be grown there. We don't have actually a national plan of a crop portfolio management. So what has happened is that people go for rice and wheat because they are sure that government will buy. So this government procurement backed by MSP has actually led to a distortion where we have too much production of rice and wheat. We lose a lot of that rice and wheat to rats and others in the warehousing. Part of the 30% loss we talk about is because of that. I think there is a need for a better balance, which should happen with the help of this. It needs also some kind of education. But like I mentioned earlier, that we import so much of edible oils and we export rice, which is actually very much against what we should do. So I think these things should get set. As we move towards demand-driven agriculture, I think this will be set right. But it will take time. Nothing will happen in next 2-3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Continia, for elaborate discussions on this thing. Once again, really is a very learning process for all the audience also. So we will forward balanced questions to you for your and we will reply back to those things.
Sure.
So we request you, please stay with us so that we can.
Definitely. I want to listen to Mr. Agarwal also, so I'll be here. Yeah.
Thank you, Ram. Very nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Agarwal, for your kind presence in this August gathering. We are really very happy to see you, and we are very eagerly waiting to hear from you about this today's program also. So before we going for the session, I like to introduce you formally. It is my duty. And being a man from the pesticides industry also, we have heard you for a lot of many a times. So for the knowledge of the audience, Sri R.G. Agrawal is the founder chairman of Dhanuka Agritech Limited. He holds degree in Bachelor of Commerce honors from the Sri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi University. He is a decisive and action-oriented visionary who took over a Sikh pesticides company named Northern Mineral Private Limited in 1980 to transform it into 1,000 crores organization called Dhanuka Agritech Limited. His contributions for adopting newer farming techniques at the grassroots level, judicious use of agrochemicals in farming, and imparting knowledge through his nationwide network of distributors and Dhanuka doctors in the field has resulted in the overall prosperity of the farmers. Sri R.G. Agrawal has been the past chairman of CCFI, that is Crop Care Federation of India, the apex chamber of all Indian agrochemical majors. He is also chairman advisory committee of Agro Chemical Federation of India. Sri R.G. Agrawal, group chairman, has been bestowed with many awards for his tremendous contribution in agro industries like Lifetime Achievement Award by Agri Business Summit and Agri Awards 2019. Mr. Agrawal, he is associated with some of the highly recognized establishment of the country as chairman, Subcommittee Crop Protection Chemicals of Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, that is FICCI, Chairman Advisory Committee Crop Life India, and member of Agrochemicals Federation of India. So we are very honored, Mr. Agrawal, for your kind presence. And now we request you to deliver your thoughts on the today's agenda, sir. Please.
Thank you, Jantio Chakravarti. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Bengal Chamber, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Friends, before I come to these laws, because these laws has been very well explained by Mr. Ram Kondania before me, I will talk to other points and then I come to these acts. You have to see the monopoly and competition, which is better. If you talk these laws, earlier there was monopoly of APMC Act, but now there are lot of options has been given to farmers. You imagine before 91, when economy was under license, for a car, for a scooter, you were having 10 years waiting period. Today, at that time, only 2 cars were there. Today, any brand car is available at your doorstep, because this is of delicensing, breaking the monopoly of only 2 companies. So similarly, see airlines. If somebody was having any emergency, he has to approach some minister or MP for a ticket. Telephone. What was the situation? 10 years waiting. So wherever competition has come, you see, today everybody has 1 or 2 mobile phone in his pocket. How it has happened? Because it has happened due to opening up the economy and opening the competition. Whatever doubts are shown by some people, either they want to oppose, they belong to opposition party and just for the sake of opposition, or they are not clear what does it mean, what are the provisions has been given. And whenever is competition in private sector, the other day we were having a one-to-one meeting with HUML, who is the biggest warehouse chain in the country. Now every warehouse is going to become a market. You and me also can open a warehouse. Their farmer can bring his crops. And I came to know in Punjab, there is mandi tax and other tax is 14.5%. And other people were talking, we are ready to work even on 4%. Then which is better? APMC or private market. All are open. No compulsion for anybody, which was at present you have to sell at APMC only. You can't sell outside APMC, or you can't take from one state to other state. Today, all restrictions are removed. And whenever I have earlier given the examples, the sectors which are opened up and competition has come, then ultimately every stakeholder has been benefited. Now the discussion was talking why wheat and rice or sugar cane, because they are more remunerative. Farmer is committed MSP. In North India, in Punjab and Haryana, where some areas has come water level below danger level, and after 1 or 2 years, there may be problem of even drinking water. And growing rice there, is it a crime or not? You are not thinking about your future generation if they will not get even drinking water. Is it right? So now government is talking of developing the clusters, district-wise cluster, district-wise focus to 1 crore. And government has announced number of new initiatives and policies. And we should see the intention. What is the intention of the present government? Do they really want to benefit the farmers or all the stakeholders? It is not only farmers. It is for all the stakeholders. I give example that farmer get price of tomato 10 rupees per kilo, and we pay in city 80 rupees per kilo. Is it justified? I don't say anybody will say that 70 rupees difference is the margin for middleman. Consumer has to pay heavy price and farmer is getting nominal price. So when this private sector will enter, then private sector will come with lot of new technology and investment. Let us see what is the agriculture investment today. As per Niti Aayog, there is not more than 2% investment of private sector in agriculture. And private sector are commercial people, businessmen people. Until they have the opportunity of returns, nobody will like to invest. You have Essential Commodity Act. Today you allow that you can keep 500 bags of pulses. Tomorrow you say you keep 100. Tomorrow you say you keep any quantity. So until unless you have long-term policies, how people will invest? So now government is making long-term policies. I like to share some data. You see, in India, we have around 142 million hectare arable land. And our adjoining country, China, has just 128 million hectare arable land. Our average rainfall is 1000 mm plus, while China rainfall is 600 mm plus. But you see the GDP, agriculture GDP, China is having 3 times more GDP than our country. Should we have proud on us, or should we rethink? In absolute term, as per FAO 2016, our GDP was $401 billion from agriculture, while China was having $991 billion. So where we are lacking, the question arises, are our farmers not hard working? No, they are much more hard working than any other country's farmer. Then Why your production is so low? The question comes in the mind of any one. Why our yield and production is so low? I remember while in one of the program of ICR, our honorable Prime Minister said, our average yield per hectare is 2 tons. I'm talking cereals. And we should take it minimum to 3 tons, which is world average. And in world average, other countries also, like poor countries, Africa, they are also included. So with this low yield, can we compete in the world? One of the reason of this low yield we have studied. Number one, our farmers are not getting new and latest technology. I will like to quote the statement of the finance minister in 2008 in parliament while presenting his budget. He said, our extension system has collapsed. These are not my words. These are the words of finance minister. And we are looking for some alternate. And now it is 2020. Governments have changed. But no alternate has come. Whatever is the present extension system, I will say government should get it audited. All this infrastructure is on taxpayers' money. And if it is not contributing, if we have KVK, then how many farmers are benefited from one KVK? It should be audited. If there is no benefit, then for each KVK, government is spending crores of rupees. What is the fun? We talk goody before our Prime Minister that our production, which was 50 million tons when we became independent, we have taken to 300 million tons. But we don't tell him other side of the coin, that our GDP is much less from agriculture in comparison to any developed country or even our adjoining country. Take example of Vietnam, which was ruined in war, and their income from agriculture, not only agriculture, you talk any field, a small country, Vietnam, what wonders they have done. So I will finish because I will leave time for question answer. One important problem is technology is not reaching, and raising the problem is not only the solution. We have to talk for solution also. The solution is private sector. As government has realized their all public sector units in industrial sector are incurring heavy losses and they want to sell out or make private. So similar in agriculture, all these institutions, whatever you see, every university is having some type of collaboration with private industry. And whatever research is done, that is done what is needed by your industry, what is needed by your farmers. In our country, in the institution, universities, it has become to publish paper and have credit. I have published so many papers. How much benefit you has given to the country or farmers, that is more important. Second point is quality of agri inputs. I'm talking a very authenticated source data. In 2018, Ministry of Consumer Affairs has done a survey through Academy of Indian Administrative Services in 9 states. The survey was done by them in 540 villages. And the survey report says 58% agri inputs are fake in the rural area. I'm not saying this. This is not my quote. I'm quoting this from Ministry of Consumer Affairs report of 2018. If our farmers get this type of 58% agri inputs which are fake, then what do you expect from farmers, how their income is going to increase? So in these laws where our private sector will come and will have tie-up, then they will ensure that farmers, they will provide the right quality inputs, and they will not only provide inputs, they will provide the latest technology also. I'm proud to say that our company started the first project of dealers training in 2006 in West Godavari district in partnership with Menace. And after that, in number of universities, we have started this dealer training program. We took first public-private partnership with MP government in Hoshangabad, and in 4 years we increased the yield by 40%, and that district was selected for best district for increasing the production, and National Productivity Council Award was given. So you see, until less with these laws, these new technologies will come, new investment will come. And as Mr. Ram said, now government has sanctioned 10,000 FPOs. Recently, a webinar was organized by Vemnicom, where NABARD chairman was also there. I was also there, and our GS, Mr. Swain, PK Swain, who is looking marketing, he was also there, and other experts. I was also there in NOS meeting. I was also in meeting with TAS organized by Dr. Raj Paroda. They have given very good recommendations, or our earlier laws were not bad, but their implementation is a big problem. I'm sorry to say, we all Indians, most of us, we don't have commitment to our country. We have personal commitment, but nobody thinks about country. Everybody talks. But until less, each individual, each Indian citizen will start thinking, if I am living in this country and what country has given to me, then I have to think, what have I given to my country also? So two important points I said. Regarding third point was marketing. And for marketing, this opening the market, this is going to play the wonders for farmers. I live in Gurugram. In the village, farmers get 30-35 rupees for milk. But I pay her 70 rupees for guaranteed cow milk. I pay from hefty price for fresh vegetables which are delivered by aggregators at my doorstep. So farmers also has to become a businessman as an entrepreneur. When we talk starting in India, we start talking with poor farmer. The days has gone. The students which were studying in IIT or MBA have done, has left their job and has come in agriculture, because now there is money in agriculture. How much money a pomegranate farmer earns or a grapes farmer earns? Why farmer should be rigid to paddy, wheat rotation or sugarcane rotation? Why our government should not support for oil seeds, which we are importing around 70-80,000 crores? Our government also has to change some of the policies. We are importing a lot of palm oil from Malaysia, Indonesia. Why we can't support our own farmers, own our country? So In agriculture, the last point which I want to share, just Mr. Kondania was talking, we are rent fed. Till what time will we talking we are rent fed? Who has stopped our farmers to collect the rainwater, to harvest the rainwater? Why can't you? Do you store your drinking water at your home or not? We store. Then why farmers should not make a small pond as per their size of the field to store the rainwater? Earlier, each village was having a pond, but when we started getting the water through tube well, we have forgot the importance of water. And now the prediction is third world war maybe not for oil, it may be for water. So each one has to understand the importance of water. Our farmer has, our honorable Prime Minister has given very good messages, and his one very good message is per drop more crop. Today still we are using flood irrigation. Why? A country, small country like Israel, desert, they are exporting like anything. Where we have all the facilities, why we can't become a hub for world market for food? You may not be knowing we grow more than 554 crops in our country, which is not grown anywhere in the world. 554 crops. And today you see in US, golden milk is the first choice. So we have lot of potential from export, and lot of educated people will enter, will support FPOs. We are also supporting FPOs, and individual farmer will not be grooming. If small farmers want to develop and groom, then they have to associate themselves with either some cluster or some FPO and use new technology and market their crops with new system. And if it happens, and it is going to happen, as Mr. Ram also said, it may take 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, area to area. But these changes are going to happen in our country also, which has already happened in world. In pesticide management bill, new bill has come 2020. They call it new, but is the rotten version of earlier insecticide of 1968. No discussion about new technology. Today, everywhere spray is done through drones. In our new PMB, we don't talk about such technologies. And these technologies are bound to come in our country also. Everybody talks artificial intelligence, but so many people don't understand what is artificial intelligence. If artificial intelligence is used in right perspective, because we are investing a lot, we are making our own research, mini research farms, where all sort of infrastructure and facility we are providing to train the farmers. We are tying up with organizations like HUML or others, and so many companies will come. It is one example. They will open their private mandis, they will make warehouses and make attraction to farmers. Please come to us, we'll charge only 5%, which in APMC is 14%. And as Mr. Ram said, that APMC, that all mandis can't continue in same old style. If Air India, Indian Airlines has not changed themselves, then what is happening? It is for auction. So this is competitive world. Either you change yourself, or market will change you, or will throw you out of market. I'm sorry to use these words. Either you be market friendly, farmer friendly, Otherwise, in coming time, they are going to throw you out. So these three laws, in my opinion, they are very, very friendly for farmer, not only farmers, but for consumers also. If farmer get 20 rupees for tomato and citizen has to pay from 80 rupees to 40 rupees, if his budget is 80 rupees, then in 40 rupees he can buy 2 kilo tomatoes. So that way his vegetable demand will increase, his nutrition will improve. Because sometimes we read or heard that farmers are not getting market, sending the vegetables on road, this thing, that thing. But if it is marketing is done, then this situation is not going to arise, because our per person consumption is very, very low. We talk our milk production is number one, but if we see consumption per person, then it's very low. So that way, in nutshell, I will say, all these three laws are very, very good, not only for farmers, but all the stakeholders. Whichever FPOs or aggregators will enter and will arrange proper marketing. For example, startups. Some of the startups are doing wonder. Some of the FPOs are doing wonders. One FPO in Nasik, they are doing more than 300 crores turnover. They are exporting grapes. They are exporting mangoes. So if farmers unite, last point is of my speech, farmer has to unite, alone will not get anything. हमारे यहाँ कहते हैं कि एक चना पहाड़ को नहीं फोड़ सकता. ऊंट अपने आप को बहुत लंबा समझता है, लेकिन जब वो पहाड़ के नीचे से गुजरता है तो उसको अपनी लंबाई का एहसास होता है. तो हमको अपनी कमजोरियों का एहसास करना है. वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट आर आवर वीकनेस एंड फाइंड अ राइट सॉल्यूशन एंड use that solution practically instead of theoretical. So far our government was talking and practically we were not implementing, but we hope, we are very positive that whatever changes are coming, they will be in the interest of everybody, and agriculture has vast potential in coming time. In this RBI first quarter result, when there was degrowth in industry or service sector, agriculture was the only shining sector, having more than 3% GDP growth. So in coming time, there is lot of potential. Imagine, even if we don't do 3 times, if we double our income of what present, then where our rural economy will go. And today, consumption of FMCG goods is increasing or much more in rural area than urban area. So rural area is going to provide the market for all other industrial products also. So that way there will be a very good balance between rural and urban areas. So thank you very much for giving me a patient hearing, and now I'm open for any question.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal, for your detailed presentations on the 3 bills, and also you have highlighted many aspects outside the purview of the bills also, like water conservation, then fake pesticides, then open markets, farmers' prosperity. All these things you have highlighted, clusters and FPOs also. So one question has come that what innovations you are doing in the input market in coming days also.
Okay, very good question.
Yeah.
You see, important input is the most important for the agriculture production. Our company has tie-up with 6 Japanese companies. So we are bringing new technological pesticides in the country. I'd like to quote one example. There is one weed, Cyprus rotundans, which mainly comes in maize or sugarcane, and so far there was no control, and farmers in their language was calling it as Ravan ka sar, because it was having nuts and rhizomes inside the soil. So you do hand picking, and after 4 days it was again germinating. So we have brought a very good weedicide which costs farmer 1500 rupees per acre, but gives him 15,000 rupees per acre additional benefit. So we are bringing such type of number of new technology, new pesticides, and our field force is working. For example, our company was the first to start seed treatment in the country in 2007 in partnership with Ministry of Agriculture, and the slogan which we were using for our one of the fungicide promotion that we gave to government, हर बच्चे को पोलियो का टीका, वैसे ही हर 20 को सुरक्षा का टीका. And at that time this campaign took a great, and by seed treatment, by a very very nominal investment, you save your crop and you get much better protection, because your earlier seedlings are not killed due to disease. So we are bringing such new technologies and taking up them to farmers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. I think many more questions will be forwarding to you and Mr. Kondinia, and we will take from you and we will forward these answers to the participants also. And is a really we are privileged that Mr. Ram Kondinia and Sri R.G. Agarwal personally had a thorough presentations on the 3 farm bills and the opportunities lying ahead, and also the few challenges, how to overcome, their suggestions to the government also, and their focus on the small and marginal farmers, how they should get cluster approach, how through the FPOs their strengths could be enhanced. So all put together, it is a challenge for the farming community to progress further. And one thing is that basically I have seen the perception of a farmer, even now in a school, if you give any drawing competition, if you tell them to draw a picture of a farmer, he cannot draw a picture of a farmer wearing shirts, trousers, and hats and all those things. He has to draw a farmer wearing a dhoti with a ugly look of the dress codes and all those things, and without any chappal or without any this thing. Perception is that farmer is a poor. Farmer cannot make any intelligent decisions. But I think time has come to relook on those decisions. What Mr. Kondinia has told also, farmers are very intelligent. They can take their own decision. We don't like to impose our decisions on them for their prosperity also. Let them have a level playing field in the agriculture, and ultimate is that farmer prosperity is the bottom line. We may have lots of bills or lots of agenda, lots of disputes, lots of disruptions, but bottom is the farmer's prosperity also. So with this, I think we had a excellent deliberations from both the speakers, and we have received a lot of questions which we will forward to both of them. So before we close, one last concluding remark from Mr. Kondinia and from Agarwal, if we can, before we go for a close, one small suggestions particularly or observations, if you can tell, then after that we will close the session for this webinar, sir. So Mr. Kondinia, you can.
Yeah, so I'll give a very brief suggestion. Since this is the Chamber of Commerce, I do feel that this is the right time to invest in agriculture. For private investments should get into agriculture. I think those of your members who are in businesses, who have industries, even entrepreneurs, even young people who want to get into value chain managements and things like that, this is the right time. Please invest in agriculture. Please go to the villages and set up these kind of facilities, including rural processing facilities, infrastructure facilities, connecting farmers to markets. These are all the things which government wants you to do. I think if you do it and it is available from banks, please do it. I think this will give you a head start and the early mover advantage, because the future will be quite good. It's just like what people did when the liberalization took place in the 90s. All those early movers and those who invested have prospered well. And I think there's the time for all of you to look at this as a huge opportunity for investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coordinator, for your suggestions. I think we will take up these suggestions to the managing committee of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce, so that how we can further cascade down your concepts into the reality. We'll definitely take a strong note of your suggestions and forward to them. Once again, heartiest thanks to you for participating with us. One more last suggestions from Mr. R.G. Agrawal, that what is your suggestions, that one suggestions you give which we should take into policy form through the chambers of commerce actually. Mr. Agrawal, please.
You see, our young youth look for job. Now the time has come that youth, instead of looking for job, they should become entrepreneur, and if they go to village and become aggregator,
Yeah.
and purchase vegetables from the market and provide to urban people, as discussed from field to fork. The time has come practically that we take care for the quality food, and people are ready to pay for quality food. As middle class is growing, earlier one was satisfied if he was getting to roti with onion or some dal. But today people only are not satisfied this. They want nutritious food, healthy food, good quality food. So if youth enter in this business of aggregators, and then simultaneously they can start their some sort of small processing, packaging, and then connect themselves with marketing chain, then definitely it will be a very good opportunity. And if they enter this field, whosoever will enter first, he can become quite big, because opportunity is so big as 10 rupees or 80 rupees. How vast difference is there? So whosoever become aggregator will pay 20 rupees to farmer, he can get 40 rupees from urban people. Then you can imagine in a service how much one can get, and if he become an aggregator and businessman, then how much he can earn. So good opportunities to youth. Instead of looking for job, you should take this message to youth, and through your Bengal Chamber of Commerce, whatever weaknesses we have discussed today, if you think proper, you may write to concerned government, central government, your state government, because the problems are both, and agriculture is state subject. So some of the implementation is needed by state, and if a state is rigid, for example, Punjab government has controlled spurious pesticide. If in Bengal also government is strict and they wish we will not allow sale of such pesticide, then definitely if farmers will get right seed, right fertilizer, right pesticide, right technology, then Bengal land is quite fertile. Bengal people, farmers are hard workers, and their definitely economy will change. These are my opinion.
Thank you. I think it is a very, very valid suggestions and for the entry of youths into the agriculture, particularly food processing. And for information, Mr. Agrawal, we are very fortunate in Bengal. Mr. From our same industry, Mr. Pradeep Majumdar is the advisor to the CM on the agri and agri-allied sector also. So we are taking constant guidance from him on the agricultures also. So here our understanding trade and the governments are quite cordial also. And another one point I have taken from Mr. Continuous presentations also, that in the as because the dispute settlement take place in the DM's office or the SDGM, the one person qualified agriculture should be at the DM's office to address all those things. I think this will be a major push for the agricultural graduates, which we should present to the government that this is the job opportunity for the agricultural graduate from the university to the pan-India. In that case, there will be a shortage of agricultural graduates will come in the future. If every district DM office has an agricultural graduate to guide the farmer about the crop rotation, crop productions, and the crop disputes, contract farming, everything, I think this will open a being an agri graduate, I found a very solid, robust opportunities for the ahead also. So with these suggestions and advices from both the pioneers in the agriculture, Mr. Kondinia and Mr. Agarwal, we sincerely thank you from the Bengal Chamber of Commerce for your valued presence, suggestions, elaborations, and your guidance. We'll take forward these suggestions to our Chamber's Management Committee. And once again, thanking you for being with us for today. So with your permissions of everybody, we are closing this webinar and looking forward to see you in short times in the upcoming webinars also.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.